What happened to the United States tanks after World War II? When World War II ended in 1945, the guns fell silent, but across Europe and the Pacific, thousands of American tanks still stood where they had stopped. M4 Shermans, M26 Pershings, M3 Stuarts. Steel giants that had crushed Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. But victory raised a question no one had asked before. What happens to an army of tanks when the war is over? This is the untold story of what happened to United States tanks after World War II. The tanks that won the war. By 1945, the United States had produced nearly 90,000 tanks, more than any nation in history. The backbone of this armored force was the M4 Sherman. Fast, reliable, easy to repair. The Sherman fought everywhere: Normandy, Italy, North Africa, the Pacific Islands. Alongside it were the M3 Stuart, a light tank used for scouting, the M24 Chaffee, fast and modern, and the powerful M26 Pershing, America's answer to German Tigers and Panthers. These tanks helped bring the war to an end. But once the enemy surrendered, they became a problem. Victory creates a crisis. When Germany surrendered in May 1945, American armored divisions stopped instantly. Tanks lined roads, fields, and forests across Europe. In Germany alone, tens of thousands of Shermans sat idle. The U.S. Army faced a massive dilemma. Keeping them was too expensive. Shipping them home cost more than building new tanks. And there was no enemy left to fight. So, the military did what it always does after war. They counted everything and made hard decisions. The scrap yards of peace. Most World War II tanks met a quiet, brutal end. They were scrapped. In massive European depots, M4 Shermans were stripped of engines, radios, machine guns, optics, then cut apart with torches. The steel was melted down to rebuild Europe, turned into bridges, trains, factories, and homes. A tank that survived artillery fire could not survive peace. By the late 1940s, thousands of Shermans no longer existed. They had become cities. Tanks left behind forever. Some tanks weren't scrapped. They were abandoned. In the Pacific, American tanks sat on islands like Saipan, Okinawa, Palili. Recovering them was too costly. So bulldozers pushed Shermans into the sea. Others were buried or left to rust. Even today, divers find M4 Shermans on the ocean floor, perfectly preserved in silence. Forgotten by history, but not by time, a second life under new flags. Not all tanks were destroyed. Many were given away. As the Cold War began, the United States armed its allies. American tanks were sent to France, Italy, Greece, Turkey, South Korea, and Israel. Israeli forces modified old Shermans, upgrading guns and armor, using them in wars decades after World War II. A tank built to fight Nazis now defended a brand new nation. The same machine, a different war. The tanks that slept in the desert. Back home, the U.S. stored thousands of tanks in desert bases. In places like California and Arizona, rows of M4 Shermans and M26 Pershings sat untouched. This was called mothballing. The dry air preserved them. The plan was simple. If war ever comes again, we'll wake them up. At the time, few believed that would happen. They were wrong. Korea wakes the steel. In 1950, war returned. North Korea invaded the South. The U.S. needed tanks, fast. Old World War II tanks were pulled from storage and rushed to Korea. Shermans and Pershings fought Soviet-built T-34 tanks. Some were outdated. Some were outmatched. Many that survived World War II were destroyed in Korea. For these tanks, the war never truly ended. From weapons to teachers. By the late 1950s, technology had changed. World War II tanks were no longer frontline weapons, but they still had value. Many became training vehicles, engineering test platforms, gunnery practice targets. New anti-tank weapons were tested on old Shermans. Armor that once symbolized power was shattered to prepare for the future. The tanks that were saved. A few tanks escaped destruction. They were sent to museums, memorial parks, military bases. Today, you can see an M4 Sherman in Normandy, an M26 Pershing in U.S. Army museums, a Stuart tank preserved for history. They no longer fight. They remember. The legacy of steel. World War II tanks shaped the future. Lessons learned from Sherman weaknesses led to better armor. Failures against Tigers led to stronger guns. Crew survival became a priority. Modern tanks like the M1 Abrams carry the DNA of Sherman crews who fought in 1944. Different machines, same purpose. Final reflection. So, what happened to the United States tanks after World War II? They were scrapped, abandoned, sold, stored, reused, and remembered. They stopped moving on tracks and started moving through history. Their engines are silent now, but their story still rolls forward.